welcome to you. You're listening to The Music Business Buddy with me, Johnny Amos, podcasting out of Birmingham in England. I'm the author of the book, The Music Business for Music Creators, available in hardback, paperback and ebook format. I'm a music creator with a variety of credits as a writer-producer. I'm also a consultant, an artist manager and a senior lecturer in both music business and music creation. Wherever you are, whatever you do, please consider yourself welcome to this podcast and to a part of the community around it. I'm here to try and educate and inspire music creators from all over the world in their quest to achieving their goals by gaining a greater understanding of the business of music. Okay, so in this week's episode, I am joined by the brilliant Russell C Brennan, who is a truly unique and pioneering individual. He is a multi-platform artist. He's released 19 books spanning fiction and non-fiction. He's produced over 500 music releases, earning a #1 and being dubbed an indie production god by national press. He's also been nominated for UK Producer of the Year and even featured in one poll as one of the top 20 most innovative record producers of all time. As a songwriter, he's had over 100 releases and recently graced the cover of Songwriting International or Songwriter International. He's performed in multiple bands as a singer, but mainly plays what is known as punk cello. His photography has been featured in several exhibitions, with Saatchi Art recognizing him as an artist of note and an award-winning poet. He's also editor of the influential publication Dedicated Follower, which has appeared in the V&A Museum and exhibition and is now being developed into a television series. And now he also founded Future Legends Records, right, which is a very innovative kind of indie label celebrating 30 years of trend setting. Formerly a #1 DJ and a self-proclaimed adventurer, he's been called the best raconteur by J.K. Rowling's agent. His visual work includes over 100 pop videos, 2 music documentaries and an animated television show. Currently, he's directing a documentary on his friend David Bowie, who he also shared management with, and aims to direct also feature films. He's also a savvy entrepreneur with multiple brands. He has occasionally consulted in the arts and the media, most notably for the BBC and international boot company Dr. Martens. There's a lot to this man's career, so let's get into it. I'm going to play the interview right now. Here we go. Russell, welcome to the Music Business Buddy. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Good. It's good to have you here with me. Let's get into the first question, Russell. Firstly, it must be said, a huge congratulations on the creating true legacy, right, with Future Legends Records, amongst all the other things that you've done. With over 3 decades worth of very pioneering kind of activities and a deep catalogue of outstanding music, you've managed to navigate through all the challenges of like the old industry, let's say, and transition into the new one and still be standing. You must be left with a few nuggets of wisdom. Is there anything that kind of leaps to mind that you can share on that subject?
Well, in some ways, the game's still the same. If you got the nerve, you got to stand out from the crowd. That's what gets you noticed, both in the old school way of doing it and the new school way of doing it. A lot of people just look what's in the charts, I'll just cash in on that, and there's a massive crowd all standing trying to get that little space where everyone's doing the same thing, and over there's a little crowd of people not doing the same thing. It takes a bit longer to get there when you're doing something a bit different, but that's the way if you want to get on and with longevity, to do it that way, really. And also
that's a good way of looking at it.
There's one other way of doing it is if you're part of a scene, because I grew up with mod, so luckily I was doing mod music, so it was a ready-made scene. But when I did pioneering music, it was more of a challenge, but I wanted to do that anyway. Anyway, that's the crux of it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, just thinking about the label side of things, one of the many interesting kind of facets of Future Legends' legacy, let's say, has been, producing new versions of kind of cult TV and film theme tunes as part of, but perhaps an alternative to, maybe just reissuing the originals. You've kind of managed to use that as a sort of tool to showcase new talent and to build obviously unique catalogue as well. What was it that made you kind of think about that as an approach to market?
I used to work in a record shop, used to manage a record shop, and everyone used to come in, you've got Man from U.N.C.L.E., Mission Impossible, Batman, blah, blah, blah. And I say, no, you couldn't get them on singles, they're nearly impossible. And then they had these easy listening albums with all these, like Coronation Street, and then it might have the Avengers or something on there. So I don't want to buy the album just for one track. So they never bought them. But I knew people were always asking for these cult themes. And also on the mod scene, they used to play a lot of the cult themes as well, the originals. And I just thought, there's such a big market for this. If ever I got a label, I should release them. But rather than be lazy and just license the originals, when you're trying to break new artists and you're trying to get new music heard, there's a lot of resistance. So I thought, I need a way to get people to listen to it. So I put just the right track listing of cult themes together, and as a record producer, I rearranged them and produced them, and I thought I'll use this to help break new artists. And luckily, my ex-wife, who was a pop star, she got quite big in the late 80s, and she did the last two recordings, We Only Live Twice and Up the Junction. Her name was Eleanor Rigby, and we put them on, and that got a bit of traction because she was on the album. Then they started listening to the new acts, and then they started to break through because they were quite happy to listen to these. And then people like Mark Lamar had it as his theme tune on his show. Mark Radcliffe was playing them all the time, Radio 1. And so suddenly all these acts where they got a lot of resistance before, the cult themes took off. And then I had a deal with Future Legend Records with Sony. And then I said to them, when I showed them the track list, I said, we never heard of the acts, who's going to buy it? Would we be lucky to sell 300 copies? I said, no, there'll be a lot of sales. So they show us how it's done. So I got on the phone to the shops. I sold 10,000 copies in the first month, and they couldn't believe it. And they said, oh, do you want a job working for us? I said, no, because you haven't got a clue what you're doing.
That must have turned a few heads by being able to kind of roll up your sleeves and, call those stores and make that happen. That's bold, man. That's brave.
I just got down and showed them how to do it because they were selling it the wrong way. They were just selling it on the name of the acts, and people saying we never heard of them. When I started selling it on the cult themes to the record shops and explained it to them, they just went for it. And then the sales team was all watching me, and I said, I'm just showing you how it's done. So I did it for like a couple of days, and then they copied what I did, and that's why I ended up selling a lot. And then it became like a trend as well. All the clubs started playing the cult themes, and people would go to the clubs dressing like Lady Penelope or James Bond or something, because I did a lot of James Bond themes on there as well. And so it became like a lifestyle trend as well. So it kind of just really took off, and I helped break loads and loads of new acts that way, but also got some big #1 hit acts out of retirement to do it as well.
Good for you. That must have been tempting at some point, for a big company like Sony to be able to go, hey, you know what, come and work for us, come and do this on a wider scale. You know, were you not tempted at any point by that?
I'm never into the money side of it, so they offered me a load of money to work for them. I said, forget it. And also Virgin approached me after the third Cult Themes album, saying, can you come and do a compilation for us about the cult themes? But I was doing an album for Dr. Martens, a unique album for them, and plus I had 2 other projects on my own label, so I didn't have the time to do it. And they said, we really want to copy this cult theme. So what they did, they just copied all my cult themes and put out the originals, 9, which was the right tracks to go on what I'd put out, and it sold 500,000. But they offered me money to do that, but I would have done that one because I knew the right thing to do, but I was so chocker with producing at the time, I couldn't do it. So yeah, the majors did take a lot of notice of it.
Crikey. Well, so there's only so many days in a week and only so much you can do, I suppose, isn't there? But
that's right.
Well, I mean, so what about, to celebrate like the 30th anniversary of the label, you released the book, The Future Legends Record Story. That must have been a really fun process to kind of put that together, because you must have had to start looking back and thinking about all the things that you did. Well, what was that process like for you?
It was great because Tony Wilson, who was quite famous in the business, used to run Factory Records, and he was on Granada TV and stuff. He used to say to me, Future Legend Records is the blueprint for a successful indie, because he said, you're still in business, you're still pioneering, you're still making money, and all the rest, because we were like a little gang, all the indie pioneer labels all went out of business, most of them. He said, but you seem to have you're always just ahead of the curve. You're like always seem to know what's going to happen, and then you set trends and it seems to take off. And so it was, I like the pioneering aspect of it, and there was lots of funny stories, along the way. Like one band I was producing called Earthling Scum, they were in the recording studio, and I was doing the professionals with them, and they said, oh, our guitarist has not turned up. We don't know if we can do it. So I said, well, I will have to scrap it. And they said, hang on, we got an idea. Cougar, our ex-guitarist, is in the mental hospital. It's not far from him. We were to go and get him. So they broke this guy out of a mental hospital, wheeled him in a trolley in a straitjacket, undid his straitjacket, put the guitar in his hand, said, Cougar, play the riff, blah, blah, blah. Then he fell asleep and they wheeled him out. I said, did that just happen? Was that a hidden camera thing? So these are the sort of things that were happening on a weekly basis. And we did groundbreaking videos as well to get to beat the opposition. Like we go down to the prisoner village in Wales and film a video down. And the guy who owned the prisoner village was a fan of my band at the time called Box Office Poison, plus the cult theme. So he let us have the whole village for free for the weekend to film it. Whereas the BBC got charged 50 grand a day. And so we did pioneering videos. And one called Checkmate by Box Office Poison. It's got all the prisoner village, and the prisoners got a lot of fans, so they all wanted to buy the video. So we actually made a profit on the video, which is unheard of in the business. And a funny story on the way home, Lisa at the time, Louise, she was in The Graduate with, who went on to become Tears for Fears, but she was too young to sign with them. She was only 15 at the time. But she was in our band, but she wasn't the brightest spark. And we were going back from Wales to England. And I said, has anybody got any Welsh money? Because we need to change it at the border. You can't spend it in England. And they said, oh, look, what is it? I said, it's red dragons on a fiver or leeks on a coin. And Louisa went, oh, I've got a little of these leeks. But it was actually thistles. But I said, oh, yeah, they look like leeks. You can't spend it in England. Buy us all fish and chips. So she bought us all fish and chips at the border. And then we all started laughing. And they said, what are you laughing at? I said, there's no such thing as Welsh money. So we all gave her the money back. So there's lots of funny stories like that in the book, The Future Legend Record Story. It was hilarious, a lot of it. But there was also downsides, like, for instance, Sony ripped us off. We sold so many records by them, and then they got very creative accounting, and they start saying, oh, we don't owe you any money. We have to pay for this, we have to pay for that. And so we were going to sue them, they were going to sue us, and we ended up amicably leaving Sony and went with BMG after that. But we only found a perfect home when we were at Pinnacle, because they understood indie labels, and then we became really popular via Pinnacle, and we didn't get ripped off after that. But there's a lot of rip-offs to work to in the business as well, because as you also know, I've got a book called Music Business Bastards that do when the music was about getting ripped off, and that helped a lot of people as well. In fact, it just helped a new band called the Molotovs that I just advised about a year ago, and they've had 2 #1 records since then. And so I'm still relevant from then, and when the book first came out, other bands took note of what was in there and became successful as well. So they avoided getting ripped off, and so on. So, in fact, just one other quick story. I saw Rick Butler not long before he died. We were at the Jam. He died recently, and he said he come over to me. He said, if only that book had been around when I thought I got ripped off something rotten. And he said, but then that book was much needed. Music Business Bastards is the book, the Bible to go to and find out how not to get ripped off, but also how to stand out from the crowd and do well. But there's a lot of advice in some ways in the Future Legend Record Story. The Future Legend Record Story gives you a really interesting journey of what it was like to be one of the pioneering indie labels, because there's all the gang of us that all were pioneering. And what was funny about it, we used to take on the majors. We used to gang up and take on the majors because we had more clout by joining together. But then as soon as after that, we'd all be fighting each other again, because we were all indie labels against each other. So that was quite an interesting ride. So this reflects all that in the Future Legend Record Story book that's on Amazon. And as do, like I say, just a quick snapshot of some of the funny stories, but there's loads in there. And we had lots of cult acts like Eleanor Rigby, who, as I said, who'd been really massive, who I was married to. And then I also did a unique thing, which was my hero as a record producer is Joe Meek. And I signed some Joe Meek acts. I signed the Honeycombs, and I said I'd only sign them if they've got the original lineup together with the girl drum and everything. And they all got together just for me. And we had a nice, successful record out. And there was another girl called Glenda Collins that was a Joe Meek act. But then I met this guy called Tony, who'd written a song. He was due to be signed to record it for Joe Meek, his song. And then Joe recorded the backing track, and then Joe shot himself, as people know about Joe Meek's story. And so Tony took the backing track and sat on it for like 50 years, and then he suddenly played it to me. And he said, "You're producing Glenda. What about doing this song called The Long Drop?" So I said, "Good idea." So I thought, Joe Meek's done the backing track. I'll produce the vocal. I rewrote some of the lyrics to make it more modern, and then put it out, and it helped Tony get his first release after 50 years. Glenda was in the care home at the time. I had to get her out of the care home, and she was going downhill, and she suddenly went uphill and got better because of doing the recording. And I got to co-produce a song with my idol, Joe Meek. from beyond the grave, so that everyone's dream came true. And that's the sort of stories you'll find in the Future Legend record story. You know, all these crazy things that I used to do and pioneering how, and it also gives an insight into my recording process as well as a top record producer, because I was listed in the top 20 most innovative record producers of all time, and I've been nominated for a UK Record Producer of the Year and that sort of thing. So any aspiring producers, that's the go-to book. But also anyone who wants to get their own label, it gives you, in a way, like Tony Wilson said, blueprint how to have a successful indie label, and it's got lots of fun stories in it. So yeah, the Future Legend record story is definitely one to get if people are interested.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, wow, God, there's not many people out there like you, Russell. It's fascinating to hear some of those things. I'm just thinking of, putting some of those stories from that period of time into the modern era. You know, could you imagine what people would do with Instagram stories and TikTok and all sorts of social media madness and PR out of some of those stories? I mean, it's remarkable.
Yeah, no, I mean, I still do things like that now, but I'm not that keen on social media, but I'm being dragged kicking and screaming to have to do a bit on Instagram. I'm on Facebook and stuff, but and LinkedIn and things like that. But the record label, futurelegrecords.com, is where you find out most about me, probably. And also I've got a magazine called Dedicated Follower that people can learn from as well.
Ah, okay. Now, because I mean, I've been reading quite a lot about you, ahead of talking with you today, and in many ways, it was kind of like, crikey me, how do I narrow this down to a few questions? Because there's so many different things that we could talk about. But one of the things that I noticed is that you are, let me get this right, the first ever male geisha, or the only male geisha. Have I got that right?
Well, there used to be two male geishas, and I'm the only one left. That came about because I used to share management with David Bowie and my fellow Brixton brother, and we got on like house on fire because we were both from Brixton, had the same sort of humour and stuff. But what he said to me one day, he said, we were both heavily into Japanese culture, but he said to me, you do all the arts, because as you've seen, you read about me, I do photography, I do films, I do a magazine, I do poetry, you name it, I do all the arts. And he was similar, he did all the arts, and he said, there's this thing, jack of all trades, master of none. And he said, but we're the opposite, we're jack of all trades, master of all of them. He said, and that's known as a geisha. I said, I thought that's a girl. And he said, no, the word geisha, look it up, it means total artist or multi-platform artist, and that's what we are. So that's the word for it in Japan. So he said, so we're the only two male geishas in the world. So I said, why is there no other ones? He said, there used to be in the 17th century, but they stopped and it became just girls. He said, I'm not sure why that was. He said, but so we're the only two male geishas in the world. And he said, what adds to it, the fact that we're both heavily into Japanese culture, because he got his, as you know, he got his outfits designed by top Japanese people. He got his photography, like for heroes and lots of stuff, done in Japan. He had lots of, and so he was always in Japan. He had his honeymoon there. Like I say, I've just, I'm currently doing a documentary about Bowie in Japan and his Japanese connections and being what it's like to be a geisha. And so that's going to be in my documentary out next year, and also in my book called Hidden Bowie that's coming out next year as well, about him being a geisha. And so now, obviously, sadly, he's no longer around. That's why I'm known as the last male geisha.
Wow, my goodness! Yeah, because you've just come back from Japan just recently, Russell, haven't you?
I have, yeah. So,
and that was part of the documentary, was it?
Yeah, because he told me all the places he used to go to. So, and he said this is the place was fascinating. So I went and filmed all the places he went to, even where he had his honeymoon. And I spoke to people who knew him, like Sandy and the Sunsets was a band that he was fond of, and the girl scene was a bit of a pin-up. And I had a 2-hour chat with her, and we got on really well. I'm going to be working with her now. But and she said, Bowie is art. That's who he is. He's just a piece of art. And the other thing about a geisha, you've got to be like a walking work of art. Every day you go out, you have to stand out from the crowd and look like, you don't have to dress like in kimonos and all that like the girls. You just have to look like a work of art when you go out and stand out from the crowd. And I always do that when I go out anywhere. So, and he used to do the same. And so that's another element of being a geisha. And so, like I say, so I've captured a lot of that in the film and lots of unique locations and speak to people. And some of the people who were fans of his, like the guy who did his photos, his nephew's one of the top DJs in Japan, and he said, I'm the successor to David Bowie. I do the groundbreaking music that Bowie would have been doing. It's got a similar vibe to it.
Crikey, okay. So can people expect that at some point, next year after, perhaps, the documentary and the book?
The documentary's got 3 parts. It's about his struggle in the 60s. It's about him as a record producer, but mostly it's about him as a geisha and what it's like to be a geisha and all the ins and outs of it. It's in depth, and because I've done the same thing, it's easy. I've got an insight into it, and then my story's about me and him together. So that's all in the book. It's probably going to be called Hidden Bowie, The Catalyst, and that's going to be out probably mid next year, probably, I'd imagine. And then the documentaries should be around the same time, but that concentrates more on just the Japanese part of the book.
Right, okay. Wow, fascinating.
That might be on Netflix or somewhere, I don't know. We'll see who we get a deal with.
Yeah, okay.
Anyone listening who wants to do a deal, just contact me.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, there's that many.
Get in early.
I'm sure there'd be a lot of broadcast partners that'd be keen to discuss that one. I would also love to ask you about the recent Psychic Holiday release. So you're kind of like the driving force, in the act, and a pop noir pioneer. And you've now released the second album, Sensory Art. Can you tell us a little bit about that release?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a while to do it because I pioneered this, as you say, music called pop noir, which has got jazz punk attitude, classical ambience, hypnotic grooves, gritty lyrics or sexy lyrics, and a filmic feel. And the main instruments in the band is punk cello, saxophone, koto, harpsichord, bass, drums, and trumpet sometimes. So we don't use guitars, basically. We use unusual instruments and arrange stuff with a filmic feel, being the record producer. So I'm the punk cellist, but I was forced. I did a couple of vocals on the first album, and then one that went top 20 in America. I was a bit shocked about that because the girl singer we hired was brilliant, and we had lots of catchy tracks on the first album. But my more avant-garde tracks really took off, and that's why I say sometimes it pays to stand out from the crowd. And so I produced a lot of classic albums in my life. Like my ex-wife had a classic album, Censorship, which Blur, Oasis, Garbage, St. Etienne all cited as a major influence on their career, and that's known as a classic album by Eleanor Reed called Censorship. So I'm used to doing classic albums, and when I did Forever Pop Noir, which was their first album, I thought I'm never going to get better than that. So I thought that is the best album I'll ever do. So that's the go-to album of mine to go, Forever Pop Noir by Psychology. So I was struggling to do. So we did some singles in the meantime. That we did a couple of San Francisco and a few other things that was quite popular. But finally, I started writing a couple of songs where I had this guy engineering for me, and the last Cult Fiends album I did, and he started playing a few things, and then we ended up writing a song, and that was a catalyst for. It was called Sea of Souls, to start doing another album. And so I had a lot of lyrics knocking around, a few ideas, and I suddenly thought, but I was always thinking I'm never going to better that first album, so that's why I kept putting it off for ages. But finally, lockdown came along, finished writing all the songs then, plus I did my magazine, Dedicated Follow, which really took off. It's like a cultural magazine, and it was featured in the V&A at the time. When it first came out, but that was another success story during the lockdown. I just went on and magazine took off really big. But the other thing was, like I say, the Sensory Art album, I started writing it, and then my singer in the band is a French abstract artist, and she's my muse, who I do lots of photography with, and then we've got a photo book out called Maiko's Journey, The Making of a Muse, that's celebrating our 10th anniversary at the moment. But anyway, she came into the band, and then I decided, right, we'll record these songs for Sensory Art. And then she said, the only art you don't do is painting. Why don't you do painting? So I said, if I come up with a new idea of painting, I'll do it. So I came up with this idea. We pushed each other's emotions in many different ways, and we both painted on the canvas at the same time, and I called it Sensory Art. So that's where the name came from the paintings. And then because we were both in the band, then we started after the paintings, we started recording some songs, and then they started coming together, and they're all pretty groundbreaking, a lot of them. There's like a really unusual Femme Fatale one that she sings on about Femme Fatale. But and we do groundbreaking videos, like the latest single's called Life's Great Adventure, and it's got an 8-minute AI video for it. And I know a lot of people are against AI, and I'm against AI nicking other people's music and making songs out of it. But you've got to look at what's the positives of AI, and making a glossy video that might cost you $500,000, you can now do that on the fairly cheap an AI, and it looks like a feature film. And so our video for Life's Great Adventure and Ben Fatale's really look top notch, like compete with any major company. And so that's what helped the Century Art album. And like I say, it's got lots of innovative tracks on it, and it's nearly as good as the first album, but I still got a fondness for that first album, Forever Pop Noir, that's got so many groundbreaking tracks on it. But this one's got a lot of good tracks on it, and that's how that came about. And that's our latest album, basically, Sensory Art by Psychic-Olly. And if you look up Psychic-Olly, you always remember to spell it Psykick. We like to put a kick in the music.
Oh, I love it. Okay, I did notice that in the spelling, actually. That's brilliant. Okay. I'm just thinking of, I'm sure there'll be a lot of music producers that would like to ask you a lot of questions about your workflow, how you do stuff, right? You mentioned the great Joe Meek earlier on, and, he was a bit of a pioneer in terms of like how he recorded sounds and how he used tapes together and all that kind of stuff. Your use of technology must have changed quite a lot, over the years. Are you still now using kind of vintage technology, tape machines, things like that, or are you kind of all in the box these days, or is it a bit of both, or what does that side of it look like to you now?
I'm a free spirit. I just do what I feel like at the time. If I feel like it needs an analog old studio, I'd go. What I did is different to everybody. I meet a lot of musicians who've been in hit bands, and they're a lot of friends of mine. And the first thing they do when their career goes downhill is they get a recording studio, and then they have to spend all their life trying to get people into the recording studio, and that becomes their job. So everyone comes to me and go, "Oh, you're a record producer. Where's your studio?" I said, "I don't have one." So I'm not interested in having a studio. So I'll just go and hire a studio if I need it. Someone wants to hire me to produce something. Or you can do stuff on computer now, because pretty much it's the same as what Joe Meek did back in the 80s, or the 60s rather. Just do it in your bedroom sort of thing. He was the first bedroom pioneer. And you could do a lot of stuff, but I still come with the same attitude of, pretend I haven't got hundreds of tracks to use, try and keep it there as much as possible, keep it down, to make it, make the tracks work for each other, rather than just get lazy and just do a lot of people, what they did in today's market, they'll do 100 vocal takes and stick them all together and then put auto-tune on it to make it perfect. But it's not about being perfect. And I'm always pioneering new things. One thing I do a lot is reverb. And like Joe Meek used to do, because engineers, I have a lot of problems with engineers sometimes. They go, when I'm mixing, they go, "Well, that's not right." "What do you mean? What do you mean it's not right?" "Not according to the manual. You should turn the knob this way, and the reverb's not in time, and it's not out." I said, "Yeah, it's not supposed to be, because what you can do with reverb is mess about it and make it into a whole new instrument." And I do a thing called ghost guitar in some of my tracks, and what I do is I play a guitar, but I don't record the guitar. I just record the effects that come after it. So that's why it's called ghost guitar, and it's just the effects that's kind of out of time effects coming off a guitar, and it creates a whole ghostly type atmosphere onto the track that people never heard before. So I like to just pioneer new stuff all the time, and so I can do that on a computer, I can do it in the studio. But like I say, with engineers in the studio, they think of it too boringly, because they've gone to some college. I never went to college, I just got on and did it, and I've had 500 releases and they've all proved quite popular.
Yeah.
Well, so these engineers, whatever.
No, that's fascinating. I appreciate your insight into that. Finally, if you could meet the 18-year-old Russell, right, and just spend 15 minutes with him now, what would you tell him?
Well, I was lucky enough. I'd already been successful at the time I was 18. When I was young, I was 15, I was going out with a girl, and her uncle had a pub, and the DJ didn't turn up. And because I had a lot of records, I was music mad at the time. She said, "Well, my boyfriend's got the records. He can play the records in the pub." So I played them. I was only 15 at the time, but I went down better than the normal DJ. So he said, do you want to do the job permanently?" So I said, "Sure." So I did it, even though I wasn't old enough to be in the pub. And then I started taking off as a DJ, and then I went to play bigger clubs after I left school. And also I got a job working for ATV Television, and for a guy called Lord Lou Grade. And as you know, from Birmingham, they became Central TV, but they were based and they did Crossroads and they did all this stuff. But they did a lot of the Jerry Anderson stuff, and so I worked in ATV. But what I did was I was writing scripts since I was 13, and I dumped a load of scripts on his desk one day, and he said to me, called me in his office, "Are you the person that dumped these scripts on my desk?" And I said, "Yeah." I thought he was going to sack me. He said, "They're really good, but you should have gone through the proper channels." So he said, "What I'm going to do is let you learn the ropes about ATV television." So I went up to Birmingham one time, but mostly it was Elstree and Cumberland Place and all these places they had. And so I started to learn about TV industry, but then I fell out with one of the directors because I was always shoving my scripts on some of the talent there, and they sacked me. So I went to Lou and said to him, "Look, I've been sacked, and can you reinstate me?" And he said, "No." He said, "I don't overrule my heads of department." He said, "But the place for you is America, Hollywood." I said, "Why?" He said, "You write really good scripts." He said, if it's not about age over here, he said, "It's called Dead Men's Shoes." He said, "That's why they wouldn't accept your scripts, because they've got these people signed up for years and years and you never get a chance." He said, "In America, if you're good enough, you're old enough." So I said, "Yeah, but I don't know anyone in America." He said, "I do." He said, "I'll give you 2 names. If you've got the nerve to go out to Hollywood, go." So he gave me the 2 names. I got on a plane to Hollywood the next week. Went out there and saw the first guy, wasn't interested. Second guy bought the script off me for $5,000. And then I was sitting at home watching this thing called The Gong Show with this guy called Chuck Berris, and it was near where I was living in LA. And so I thought I'd written another show called The 20th Century Bounty Hunter. It was like Clint Eastwood in the 21st century. And so I saw the address of this place. And so I went down and I got lucky. I walked into the reception, and there was this guy, Chuck Berris, in the reception. And he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to sell you my scripts." And he said, "What's it about?" And when I told him, he said, "I only do game shows." He said, "Go away and write me a game show, I'll buy it off you." So I went away that night, wrote a game show. I was back in his doorstep the next day. He couldn't believe it. He said, "What? You already wrote a game show that quick?" I said, "Yeah, well, it doesn't take much to write a game show, surely." And he said, "Come in." And he read it and he bought it off me. So
really?
He bought like an option. Yeah, he bought an option. He paid an option money on it. And then I sold it again to ATV when I got home. So, so you got to have the nerve to just get up and do stuff sometimes. And so not everyone can do that. But there's an actual... but there's a book about my early life called, because like I said, when I was playing the DJ, when I was the DJ, like I said, there used to be the chalkboard outside with my name on it, half washed away by rain. And I went from that to playing. I got signed up by a big agent. I'm playing all massive first super clubs in Europe with thousands of people out, with my name in neon lights outside. So that was a big culture shock. But like I say, I got lucky in that respect because the girlfriend got me the job of that DJ job, but it was your skill that gets you on in the end, and having the nerve to just get on and do it, because there's a lot of competition out there. So I'd say to people, get on and do it. But there's also another philosophy, because I'm immersed in Asian culture, is there's a thing called, if you want to know what's up the road, if you want to know what's up the road up ahead, ask the man coming back down it. And that means, ask someone with knowledge, and get knowledge is the key, because if you've got the knowledge, it can help you get on. Don't be afraid to ask people for advice, help, or like read books. Like you've had a book out, I know, on the music business. I've got one out. That rather than make loads of mistakes and get ripped off, you could save yourself, buy a tenner just by getting a book. Or these days you can watch a podcast or whatever it might be. So it's a lot easier nowadays to get information, as it wasn't so easy back there. So when I was 18, I'd already been like quite successful, and then what happened next was I was in Denmark, like I said, playing these big places, and then I met Eleanor and started going out with her, and then she came. We were in Denmark at the time. She got arrested for not being not having a work permit, and they were about to deport her. And I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "Well, she's working illegally. She's going to have to deport her." And strangely enough, the week before, I'd asked her to marry me, even though I'd only been out with her a couple of months. And she said yes, and we're going to get married like the following year. But then they said, so I said to the policeman, "Can't she stay?" He said, "I'm supporting her." He said, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm boyfriend." They looked at my green card. I had one as a DJ. And then he said to me, "Look," I said, "If it was a relative, would it be different, like a mum, a dad, or a husband?" He said, "Yes." So I said to the policeman, "Okay, would you like to be best man at my wedding?" And he said, "What?" I said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, we were going to get married anyway. We will get married now." So he said, are you very serious? I went, yeah. So we got married that Saturday, and he was the best man, the policeman who arrested us.
What?
And then the mayor of the city was married us. And then Eleanor, then I was, like I said, I was one of the most successful DJs in Europe at the time, and they were offering me loads of money to carry on. And Eleanor kept saying, I don't like all the girls hanging around, I want you to quit. So I said, what am I going to do? She said, well, I want to be a singer, and you write songs, and you're really good at producing because you produced some demos for some bands. Why don't you do that? And so, for love, it was like A Star Is Born. Okay, I'll be the backroom boy, you can be the star. So we got married, we were married, come home to England, and then her first single took off really big, and then that's how I ended up being big in the music industry, through that kind of way of doing things, you know.
Goodness me.
But,
wow. Gosh, life has some funny twists and turns, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's in my book, From Chalkboard to Neon Lights, my DJ years, about my early years, and it's got lots of fascinating stories in there as well, about problems of Hell's Angels in Denmark and all the different characters you meet. But like I say, it shows my transition from, because you asked me about, the reason I mentioned this, you asked me about pre-18, it shows you my history before that, from 15, to get how I got to where I wanted to go, and where the career started chopping and changing to different parts of the entertainment industry. Yeah. And like I say, so my main thing is I just say, just go and do it, have the nerve to do it, or if you can't do it, learn about it through books, and there's a lot more places to learn your knowledge these days. Don't just, it's all well and good to learn from your mistakes, as people like to do from time to time. That's all right. It's good to learn from mistakes, but you don't want to keep on making mistakes and having a mental breakdown, you know. So it's better just at some point to start doing things differently. Yeah,
that's a solid piece of advice. That coupled together with the idea of just not being afraid. You know, it's the easiest thing in the world to just be afraid of something, and to not be. You know, it takes courage, right? And you're a fine example of that in many different paths that you've walked throughout your life thus far, you know. Russell, thank you so much for joining me here today. I really, really appreciate your insight. Thank you for everything that you do and you continue to do. Good luck with all your projects, your ideas, and thank you for joining me. It's much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Johnny.
Wow, what a dude. I tell you, guys, I could have sat there for like half a day and just carried on talking to Russell and asking him questions and understanding more and more about him. There are so many facets to his career, and there are so many layers to him as a person. He's fascinating. He's a pioneer. He's a creator. He's a visionary. He's an artist. He's many things. And it was a pleasure to have him on the podcast this week. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. Have a great day. Until next time, may the force be with you.
The music business.